Cybersecurity is big business in today's world. With technology woven into every corner of modern life, the threat of digital attacks is ever present. The major hacks we read about in the headlines often begin with a simple vulnerability, an overlooked weakness that an attacker seizes to break into systems. In this video, we'll break down what a vulnerability truly is, the different types you need to know, and how they're used and managed in the world of penetration testing. At its core, a vulnerability is a flaw or weakness in the design, implementation, or behavior of a system or application. These flaws can be exploited by attackers to gain unauthorized access or carry out malicious actions. Though cybersecurity organizations have slightly different ways of defining it, the essence remains the same. According to the U.S. National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, a vulnerability is a weakness in an information system, system security procedures, internal controls, or implementation that could be exploited or triggered by a threat source. Vulnerabilities can arise from all sorts of issues: bad software design, misconfigured systems, or even how users behave. They don't just happen by accident. Often, it's a mix of complexity and human oversight that creates them. While we'll explore more advanced vulnerability types in another session, for now, it's useful to understand the 5 main categories. First are operating system vulnerabilities. These are flaws within the OS itself and can lead to dangerous situations like privilege escalation, where attackers gain higher level access than they should. Next are misconfiguration-based vulnerabilities, which happen when software or services are set up incorrectly. Imagine a website exposing user data just because of a small misconfiguration. These mistakes can be costly. Then we have weak or default credentials. Many applications come with preset usernames and passwords, like admin for both fields. If those aren't changed, attackers can guess them in seconds. Application logic vulnerabilities are another type, arising from poor software design. A broken authentication system, for example, might allow attackers to pretend to be someone else. Lastly, human factor vulnerabilities take advantage of us, real people. Phishing emails that trick users into revealing passwords fall into this category. As a cybersecurity professional, identifying and leveraging vulnerabilities is part of the job. But it doesn't end there. The next step is managing them, evaluating their severity, categorizing them, and fixing what matters most. Vulnerability management is essential because patching every single vulnerability is nearly impossible. In fact, only around 2% of all discovered vulnerabilities ever get exploited, according to a 2020 study by Kenna Security. That's why the focus is on prioritization, dealing with the threats most likely to be used in real attacks. This is where vulnerability scoring becomes vital. It helps measure how dangerous a vulnerability really is. One of the most popular systems used is the Common Vulnerability Scoring System, or CVSS. First introduced in 2005, CVSS is now on version 3.1, with version 4.0 in draft. It uses a variety of factors to score a vulnerability, including how easy it is to exploit, whether an exploit already exists, and how it affects the CIA triad: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. The final CVSS score falls into 5 categories. A score of 0 means none, 0.1 to 3.9 is low, 4.0 to 6.9 is medium, 7.0 to 8.9 is high, and 9.0 to 10.0 is considered critical. However, CVSS isn't perfect. While it's widely used and free, it wasn't originally designed for prioritization. It also heavily depends on whether an exploit already exists, and yet, only a fraction of vulnerabilities ever have one. Once scored, a vulnerability's CVSS score rarely changes, even when new exploits emerge. That's where a newer scoring system called Vulnerability Priority Rating, or VPR, comes into play. Developed by Tenable, VPR is designed to be more dynamic and risk-focused. Unlike CVSS, VPR doesn't just look at how bad a vulnerability is on paper, it considers how relevant that vulnerability is to your actual environment. If you don't use the affected software, the risk is effectively 0. VPR scores also change over time, sometimes daily. It uses a similar scale: low, 0.0 to 3.9, medium, 4.0 to 6.9, high, 7.0 to 8.9, and critical, 9.0 to 10.0, but without the none category. VPR considers over 150 different factors to calculate its scores, which makes it powerful, but also exclusive. It's not open source and can only be used as part of a commercial platform. Also, it doesn't put much weight on the CIA triad, focusing instead on real-world risk. As you explore different tools and services in cybersecurity, you'll come across a wide range of applications with their own vulnerabilities. Whether it's a web server or a content management system, each piece of software can have unique flaws. Thankfully, you don't have to discover all of these from scratch. There are public databases that help security professionals keep track of known vulnerabilities. The first of these is the National Vulnerability Database, or NVD. It catalogs vulnerabilities under a system called CVE, Common Vulnerabilities and Exposures. Each CVE is labeled using a standard format, such as CVE 2017-0144, which refers to the vulnerability exploited by the infamous WannaCry malware. The NVD allows users to filter vulnerabilities by category and submission date, making it a useful place to track emerging threats. However, NVD isn't always the most practical tool when you're searching for specific exploits. That's where ExploitDB becomes invaluable. It focuses on real-world, working exploits and is especially useful for penetration testers. On ExploitDB, you'll find actual code snippets, known as proof of concepts or POC, that show how a vulnerability can be used in an attack. These are organized by software name, version, and author. Let's walk through a practical example. Imagine you find a minor vulnerability during an assessment, say, a version disclosure bug that tells you an application is running Apache Tomcat 9.0.17. With this info, you can go to ExploitDB and search for exploits that specifically target this version. What started as a small detail can now lead to a serious vulnerability and possibly full exploitation. In real-world scenarios, professionals often chain multiple vulnerabilities together to achieve meaningful results. It's this process, discovery, analysis, and exploitation, that forms the core of penetration testing. And by understanding both how to find vulnerabilities and how to assess their severity, you're already well on your way to mastering the art of ethical hacking.